Good morning, internets, and welcome back to another discussion video. So today, I wanted to introduce you guys to two of my beloved friends, Alan Muliger and Love, and we've had so many lovely conversations about logic. And when I was talking with Alan late last year, and we started this project, Alan told me that he believes that Jesus Christ is his Lord and Savior, and that's very much different than what he believed like 10 years ago or so. And then at the time, Love, who is also someone who loves to study logic, I think I got him into that, um, believed that Jesus Christ was his Lord and Savior as well until very recently. And I'm like, that's peculiar that that's opposites of people that I find are so similar. And so I'm like, I gotta get these two in a room just to have a conversation. I want this to be as productive as possible, just to like help people that are viewing. So I would love for this to be public, and I promised Alan that in order for us to get this public, we would all agree afterwards, if that we're okay with it. That this program needs to match Alan's mission statement. So we need to make sure that Love's okay with this before we continue. So Alan, what is your mission statement? So that way we can make sure this program is that.
Well, to be clear, it doesn't have to match a heuristic that I have of the world, but the idea was that
Okay.
essentially the intention here is to have a real discussion, but not necessarily try to prove ourselves right or someone else wrong. It's more of an appreciation for each other's perspectives and understanding that it's actually the differing perspectives that allow things to be able to function so effectively. So is the condition was, as long as we're willing to have that discussion in that way and not have it be a thing of like, well, you're wrong and here's why, I'm down for everything.
I
Awesome.
agree.
Great, great. Love's into it too. Awesome. And Love, welcome to my channel. This is the
Thank
first
you.
time that Love is actually on the channel, so I'm
I'm
excited.
excited. I'm
Yay.
excited. Thank you for inviting me. This is going to be a fun discussion.
Absolutely. So Alan and Love have a lot in common. They're both talented musicians. Love took his musician life to like his full-on career now, and it's so exciting. And for a time, I worked with both Alan and Love on the same musical project that is yet to be announced, that we're still working on one day. But I just found that that was a fantastic coincidence. Um, but yeah, yeah. So uh, I think what would be productive is to share our stories of how we came to what we believe, and then if we have any time afterwards to have some chatting. Um, all right. So, very quickly, because mine's the least interesting. I grew up in a Christian household. I thought that I wasn't allowed to not be Christian, so I literally lied to my family when I was a child up until I was a teenager, and I realized that atheists exist and were okay to exist. And then I'm like, oh no, yeah, that's me. That's definitely me. And I have been to multiple Bible studies since, Christian Bible studies. I would love to believe, if Christianity was true, I would love to believe it. I would like to fit in, but I'm simply just not convinced that particular religion is the case. Maybe it's Islam. I'm reading the Quran right now, and hopefully by the end I'll be truly converted. But we'll see. But anyways, that's my story. Um, I'm gonna leave it up to Alan or Love. I don't know who wants to go first. I don't want to like manipulate
I'm
who
okay
goes
letting
first.
I'm okay letting Alan go first.
Oh, cool. All right. I was like, genuinely, because I love, I just like very quickly, I'm like looking at you, I'm like, man, this is a really good dude. I can just tell like immediately,
I
really,
appreciate that.
yeah, really kind, really caring, and I'm really honored to be able to be in this space with the both of you, and also to get to know you, love. It's really awesome. Yeah, I can share my story. So
Touche.
I grew up, yeah. So interesting story of mine. So I grew up in and I guess it was a Christian household. I don't even know if it was really defined as such. I remember attending Methodist church. I was in the choir as a kid at a Methodist church, and we attended church here or there. But I really genuinely, I really disdained religion quite a bit growing up. I was not a fan of it, and it was because like to me, what I didn't like was there was this big group of people that it seemed that the people who quoted the Bible the most seemed to be also the people who were the most bigoted, hateful, and racist. And I was like, well, I don't want to be like that. So why the F would I continue to go to church? Why would I go to a space where it seems that everybody gets polarized into a particular thing? Everybody puts their hands up and gets excited and claps for pastors who say very emotionally charged, and now learning with the discussions that I've had with Bryce, like oftentimes fallacious things. I was like, I don't want any part of this. I don't want to touch it. I don't want to be around it. No. And so I say this frequently. I grew up and up until honestly 2 years ago, like most of my life was two middle fingers up at the sky. I was like, this isn't real. Don't need anything of it. And it's just a way to manipulate and control people's psychology. And at about I started my own business 2 years and 3 months ago now. And I ended up in a place where I had no money left, couldn't pay for rent, didn't know where the next money was coming from, couldn't even pay for groceries, and was in an absolute panic. I had just recently left my previous relationship, which I had built a whole life around. It was, we had the American dream had been accomplished in that previous relationship, and I had realized, oh shit, I built a whole life based off this idea, not based off of what I actually wanted. And so I kind of had a whole life eject reset moment, like a factory reset of my entire life. And I found myself in an apartment with no money, no food, and no way of how to pay rent. And I was in absolute desperation. And in this moment where I had no money to pay for a mentor or to have a mentor, I didn't have one at the time. My parents and my family certainly didn't know what I was going through because they had never run their own business in the way that I was running a business. I had no one else to turn to. And so I was like, maybe I'm going to start praying. Like maybe that's maybe that's gonna work, because I've tried everything else. Because like backstory too, having been secular, um, I had really gone deep into the personal development industry. I spent over $250,000 in my own development, have attended over 55 plus personal development events, read all the books, done all the speak, like all this stuff. And even despite all that investment, time, energy, like my life still wasn't working. It wasn't, and that was kind of the main metric. It was like, man, I'm doing all this stuff and stuff still isn't working. What the heck else do I need to do? And it led me to that place of like, let me just try praying and seeing how that works. And then a buddy of mine said, hey, let me get you your first Bible. And I said, I don't know about that. And he's like, well, why? And I was like, well, because I'm not a big fan of religion. And he said something that changed my perspective forever. And he said, I said the word religion 3 separate times in this conversation. And this is someone who is very quiet, very calm, very patient, doesn't interrupt anybody. He'll listen to you for an hour if you're talking for an hour. And then he'll very calmly respond to you. But I said the word religion 3 times, and this is someone who he has very strong faith in Christ. And he said, "Oh, I don't like that word." And he said it very abruptly, and it shocked me because again, this is a quiet person. And I was like, what do you mean, what word? And he says, religion. I was like, you don't like the word religion, bro? What are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, I just don't like it. I said, well, okay, what word would you use instead? And I thought he would just say, spirituality or something like that. And he didn't. He said relationship. And I was like, relationship? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, man. He's like, and he said, he's like, God is not the songs. It's not the church. It's not the Bible. It's not the people. It's not any of those things. It's a one-on-one thing that you have with something beyond this realm of reality. It's between you and that thing. And that's it. And if anybody tries to convince you otherwise, they're wrong. It's just between you and that thing. And I was like, well, that sounds a lot less awful than all the other shit that I was taught. I want to know what that looks like. And so he's like, yeah, let's get you a Bible. And so I started to get into the Christian faith from not a lens of I need to copy what I was taught or how everybody else does it or what I'm told I should be doing it like. I looked at it strictly from a lens of how do I feel about it? What do I agree with this? Do I not agree with it? Do I subscribe to this? Do I not subscribe to it? And over time, having gone through that process in my own life, have found myself to really, really fall in love with, and I won't, and I'm not gonna, go super dogmatic, but what I will say is that I found myself that to really love the teachings of Christ, that the more that I've done my best to be like how he was, and also explore what that might actually be and what information was left out in traditional texts because of the amount of times that the Bible has been rewritten. The more I've gotten hungry for being like Jesus as best as I possibly can, the better things have gotten in every single area of my life, relationship, finances, all the above. So that's kind of like the short version. Even, and I can, Bryce knows I can talk for very long periods of time, but that's kind of the short version of how I've gotten to where I am.
Alan, it's not just you. It's literally all three of us. We could go on for like a 10-hour marathon. That's who we are.
All right. Very, very, very well spoken. And I'm sorry you had to go through all that stuff. Sincerely, I mean that sounds awful. But I'm glad you found peace, even if the way in which we both might find peace is different. I am happy that you found, at least hopefully, a more peaceful way of living your life.
Wait, really quick,
Mhm.
love. May I
Yeah.
say one thing? I think that maybe a lot of people that came into this program might have thought that this would have been like a debate kind of thing.
Hmm.
And what really speaks to me that Alan shared at the very beginning was that there there's so much polarization within the world, and like regardless of what you believe, I want to make sure that everyone feels that this is a safe space to share what your journey is. So that's all I wanted to say.
Oh yeah,
Sorry
yes.
to cut you off, love, but yeah, go ahead.
Oh, of course. I'm not here to debate. Um, so my story is very shortly. I'm sorry if you heard that honk. My story very shortly is that I grew up Catholic. I was raised Catholic. And as I got older, I held on to my faith. But over the years, I started to question things a little bit more. And then after meeting you, Bryce, I started really, really thinking about it more. It became less about, or it became less of just random questions popping into my head every once in a while, and more of I'm going to actively investigate this and see if I think it's true. And there was a myriad of things that really kind of started to push me away from it. But I would say, just for the sake of time, the thing that really like set me off was, I believe it's called theological fatalism, the idea that God knows the future, yet you also have free will. These are two things that are incredibly important to Christianity, and I found that these two things could not exist at the same time. That was the thing that really officially set me off. That was the thing that really made me start thinking, okay, this really might not be real. Um, and then after that, investigating kind of the origins of Judaism and things like that. I say Judaism as opposed to Christianity because Christianity, as we all know, is kind of a, forgive the expression, quote unquote, continuation of Judaism. So that was what I wanted to explore. Where did the concept of Yahweh come from? And all of that kind of came together. And eventually there was a moment where I was like, can I continue to tell myself I believe in God? And the answer to that was no. And it really scared me because religion was such an important part of my life. It's really, when you grow up religious, it's a deep part of who you are. That's where you get your morals and your ethics from. That's where you get your sense of meaning from. That's where you get, the direction of your life, I guess, if that makes sense. It all comes from that. So to let that go was really, it, I would best describe it as like, jumping into a pool of cold water. I knew I had to do it, and I didn't want to draw this out. So the moment I decided that I could not believe in it, I just went full on into it. And maybe I'm wrong. I'm totally open to being wrong. I'm just interested. I think I'm interested in the truth. I don't think human beings really care as much about the truth as we think we do. I think we care about what helps us survive, even if it's on a subconscious level. But I think I care about the truth. That's why I use the word I think. And to me, this is the best explanation for the world I find myself in.
Thank you for that
So,
share. I really acknowledge your bravery in the process of like having something that you literally define life by to
mhm.
then go from that to I think I'm going to let that go and then allow life to unfold as it would when a literal like foundation is removed and then something is put in its place. Uh,
Thank you.
that's powerful, man. That's a good story.
I appreciate it. I would say the thing that scared me the most was morals. Like stepping away from it, I thought, where am I going to get my sense of morals from? Because we grow up with a sense of right and wrong from whatever we're taught. I mean, you could be Muslim, you could be Hindu, you could be Jewish, or you could even be secular, and you're going to have from a young age, hopefully, you're going to be inculcated with these ideas of what is right and what is wrong. And that was the thing that scared me the most. But but yeah, yeah, I think that. Well, I won't go deep into it, but I think we all kind of know what's right and wrong for various reasons. But thank you for that.
Yeah. I find it if you embrace it, if do you want this to be organic in terms of how it flows or what's the
Yeah, mostly, mostly just, I just wanted to like get you two in a room, and I figured
Mhm.
this would be such an amazing conversation. Like, we got to
Yeah.
have this recorded. Um, but just really quick, I remember that what initially sparked what would become this event was Alan asking me to have a conversation with him about what I thought of the Bible, because I had just finished reading the whole thing. I don't want to like pick on it too much, but like I kind of wanted to just talk about it a little bit. Um, Love has told me that he's actually not read the entire thing yet.
Hmm.
Um, but you have been studying the
Yeah,
Gospels,
I've been
right?
going through it. Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, when
great.
you grow
So
up. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I just want to say, I wanted to quickly just get everyone's thoughts out there just a little bit.
Hmm.
Again, don't be too harsh, one way or the other. But just like our overall thoughts, because I wanted to give Alan
Hmm.
that because I know he
Hmm.
asked me for that.
Sure, sure, sure.
So does anyone want to go first? It might be better to go in the order of who read it first, which would be Alan, me, and then Love.
Hmm. Yeah. So you want me to, or you who do you want to
Uh,
go first?
I would love Alan.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
he
yeah,
still here?
yeah, I'm still
yeah.
here.
Oh, okay. Okay, I didn't see
Oh,
him.
I
Okay,
understand
yeah.
because he went
Oh,
first.
go.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, I'm open to sharing. Yeah, so you want me to share just my general impression of the Bible is the is the ask?
Yeah, well, I remember you told me that like that was the biggest thing. You read the whole Bible, and then afterwards you're like, yep, Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. And I found that to be fascinating
Mm.
because typically I have heard the expression, and again, this is from atheists, so I can say this is more likely biased, that reading the Bible is the quickest way to become atheist. And here we have an atheist reading the Bible, coming out. He won't call himself a Christian, but you're convinced that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior. If that's not a Christian, I don't know what is. But hey, your identity, you can call yourself whatever you want. That's fine. I'm gonna go with what you want me to call you. Is there a particular? You're a theist, right? For
Yeah, I
sure.
mean, like if I were to self like identify, I think what I would say is a follower of Christ. It's like I
Okay.
don't. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Because like I personally like I think like technically like if one is following Christ, then that makes you a Christian.
Mhm.
But I think that the label Christian's been so taken over by churchianity rather than like it's like there's this like
Agree.
what yeah, the church is like taking over what that is to such a degree that I really believe that I will stand firm that there's a ridiculously strong divide between what Christ actually taught and what is often taught in church.
Which churches are you referring to? Because I know there's several different churches. There's, of course, the Orthodox churches, there's the Catholic Church, and then there's the 3,000 plus Protestant denominations. Are you saying that all of those you think are wrong, or is there like a specific one that you find particularly disagreeable that has a lot of say in the world?
Yeah, the one that I'm referring to, is a great question. So yeah, to be clear, I haven't attended tons of different religious institutions. The ones I'm referring to is most namely non-denominational Christian churches. So churches that are, it's like
Okay.
they teach about Christianity and
Mhm.
there's no specific denomination they go under. But like a lot of like the mega
Sure. Yeah. May I ask, do you go to church every Sunday? Or maybe not every Sunday, but do you attend church?
I used to go every Sunday, and then there would be moments where I would be irked by certain things that I was like, I don't feel called to go every Sunday in this season of my life. I think there's, yeah. So I found myself like oftentimes getting swayed in one direction or the other
Mm.
by being there. And I was like, I want more strength within my own faith before I like go and do it regularly again. So that's my kind of more complex answer.
Sure. Let's disregard every Sunday. Do you, to some
Ju-
extent, regularly go
Love,
to church?
is it? I'm
Uh-huh.
sorry, love. I
Hmm.
really want to get to the Bible,
Okay. Sure. Let's get to the Bible.
Okay, we'll do the
and
And I
Bible.
don't want to be,
then we'll do.
yeah, and I don't want to be too inquisitive either. So just tell me if I'm getting too much like
No,
this.
you're good. No,
Oh,
Okay.
what you're asking is great. I want to make sure we
Sure.
for sure cover the Bible, and then we're just
Okay.
gonna like open it up, and
Hmm.
free to
Sure.
go. But yeah, Alan,
Absolutely.
go ahead. So yeah, tell your story, reading the Bible, what you thought, how you came to the conclusions you did.
yeah. So I started reading with the frame of looking at it as um like genuinely looking at it as something more than just literal rules and regulations to follow. Um, and so I didn't look at it from that perspective. I didn't read it from a literalist viewpoint. I was looking at it much more from a symbolism standpoint, a parable standpoint. Or I guess would you call that parabolic? I guess you would.
Hmm.
Yeah, a parabolic standpoint. And also was keeping in mind that the Bible itself has been rewritten, taken out, things added in numerous times, or not in numerous times, to the point where a lot of it can be used to forward certain agendas. So I was very conscious as I was reading to take it in, but also to be in this place like if I don't agree with that, I'm not going to accept that as 100% truth just because it's in this book. And so there was this constant feedback process between what do I agree with, what do I not agree with, what do I want to take in, what do I not want to take in. And so I tried to be as I was reading it, as open as I could be, while also being as like protective of my own value systems as I could be, such that if there was something in there I really liked, I could really soak it in. And if there was something I didn't like, then I would, reject it. And because I didn't want to be on either side of the spectrum. I didn't want to be fully taking every single thing in, and I didn't want to be fully in rejection either. And the two things I really liked about it, one, it seemed to build upon it when reading it from start to finish. Like some people had told me to read it, piecemeal. Here's a Bible reading plan and read it in this order. And I'm really happy. Intuitively, I was like, no, a book is written like so, so I'm gonna read it like so. I'm gonna read it from start to finish. And what I liked about it, number one, was it seemed to the lessons and the complexities of things seem to build upon itself pretty organically. Like it's like in Genesis, it's very like A, B, C, and then as you move on, it's like, well, what if A and B are put in the same room and they don't agree? It's like, oh, well, then you would then do 8.5, and then you'd add a number system to the A's and B's and the letters. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So, and not literally, but that's just me like breaking down like how I really began to appreciate how you would take these things so simply and it became more and more complex over time, was what I really liked. And then the second thing I liked is when it came down to the Gospels, I really liked the variability between them. I liked witnessing and noticing some details had variable, and there were other details that were exactly the same every single time. And to me, it was telling me more about it was starting to inform me more about who Jesus likely was versus wasn't, based off of all those conflicting details. Like example, in some parts, a detail that was inconsistent was how many times a rooster would crow before Peter realized that the prophecy of Jesus telling him, "You're going to deny me 3 times." The number of times the rooster would crow was different in every single gospel. This time it was 3, this time it was 1, this time it was not at all, or whatever. And yet, like little details like when I can't remember exactly who it was, but I think it was Peter and one other followed Christ to this mountain, and they saw Moses and was it Abraham? It was two people they saw in a vision.
Elijah,
thank you. Exactly the same. The text, regardless of who wrote it, that section was identical each time, in the same line of events, almost the same words. Or like Pilate's decision of what he said, why he wouldn't decide to persecute Christ. It's like, I see nothing wrong with anything that you're accusing him of. There were certain details again. So I appreciated and enjoyed that journey of being like, oh, interesting. Some of this isn't the same. Some of it is. I wonder why. Who would have tried to make it that way? Why would they have been trying to muddy things up? Was it just telephone, or was it, So I enjoyed the detective work around learning more and more about what Jesus' story actually was, as much as I could get from the book. So those are the detective work was fun. A couple of the books in it were fun, but overall, what I liked is that it seemed as though as I continued to read the book in order, the complexity of my ability to evaluate my life and how I relate to life seemed to also become more complex and more capable, which I found fascinating. I did not anticipate that reading a book, especially like the Bible, I didn't anticipate it would have any physical effect on how I look at the world or feel about the world, and make me more, in my experience of my own self, more capable, more able, more fluid, more flexible. I genuinely thought the more I read the book, the more rigid I was going to become. And I found that the opposite occurred. And that to me was the most fascinating, because the doomsday prophecy I had for myself was, the more I read this, the more, bigoted and racist I'm going to be. And it ended up being the exact opposite. So that was my general experience of reading the Bible.
Gotcha. So, I have so many questions. This is so interesting. Okay.
Love, may I go second?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I completely forgot. Yeah. I'm getting too excited. Go ahead.
Okay, great. I want to see Alan. How do I? Oh, Alan, talk, and then I'll see you.
I'm here.
I'm on a version where I can only see one person in front of me. Okay, great. I'm so glad that you don't take it 100% literally. I was planning to like hold back and be incredibly charitable. But I now feel like, okay, I just want to be authentic with my thoughts, which I'm sure Alan wants. Yeah, okay, Alan loves that. Okay, great. Uh yeah, so in short, I was expecting the Bible to be a little less fallacious. There wasn't much fallacies. I thought some stories were interesting. I was not expecting how long the Old Testament was going to be. I thought it was like half old, half new. No, it is not. I think it's like what 78% of the Bible's Old Testament, and like it felt like almost all of that was Psalms. Holy shit. That was ridiculous. Alan, you can unmute because I'm curious your thoughts, or I like to hear your laughs. Um, but what was I gonna say? Oh yeah. The one of my favorite stories in the Bible was towards the end of the Old Testament, and I forget the names of the actual guys in the Bible. I know the Veggie Tales version where it was Rack, Shack, and Benny. But it was about how there was this like evil ruler that wanted them to worship this golden calf, I think it was. And they're like, no, I'm my religion's Yahweh, like you can't take that away from me. And then the dude's like, how about I throw you in the furnace for not believing what I believe. And so he does. And then he looks in the furnace and he's like, I thought we threw 3 people in there. How come there's 4? Um and then they come out, and then presumably, what I interpreted that the first time I read it as like, oh, is that supposed to be Yahweh? According to biblical scholars, it's universally agreed that it's supposed to be an angel. So I'm like, okay, they probably know better than I do. That's more likely an angel than not. But that is, in my opinion, the one good thing that happened in the Old Testament. A lot of it's rough. Um, yeah. Uh, Alan, you could unmute so it could show your face sometimes.
I'm unmuted. I'm unmuted.
You're unmuted. It
Now I
says you're
am.
muted. Oh, so weird. Okay, I'm
I
sorry.
think maybe when you're not talking, maybe it automatically mutes you. Like I know they do that on Discord.
Oh, that's so weird. Okay.
I have no idea. That's my guess.
Okay, very good. Um, I I have a joke here. The very end of the Bible was funny to me. Um, I'm gonna read the very end of it. So I believe this is Revelations 22, and I'm gonna go to 17. The Spirit and the bride said, "Come," and let the ones who hear say, "Come." Let the ones who is thirsty come, and let the one who wishes to take the free gift of the water of life. I'm going to skip to 20. He who testifies these things say, yes, I am coming soon. Amen. Come, Lord Jesus. And the grace of the Lord Jesus be with God's people. Amen. And that is the end of the Bible. And I wrote on Facebook something like, wow, I was surprised just how many people decided to come at the end of the Bible. It was my favorite part, and I climaxed.
The way you read that, honestly, it was my favorite reading of Revelation 22 that I've ever heard in my life. Thank you for that.
It's so great. Um, yeah, I thought it was interesting that you recognize there was inconsistencies with Jesus during the Gospels. Because yeah, I just remember there were parts where like Jesus is like, all right, I'm gonna do this miracle for you, but like don't tell anyone. And then later he's like, look at my big dick of miracles. I'm gonna do all these miracles. And yeah, I thought that was interesting. I'm gonna say my least favorite part of the Bible was this story. I totally forgot where it was, but the story was something like um a father uh had 2 daughters that wanted to like um have their way with their father to get like his land or something like that. If I'm wrong, please correct me, but because I kind of remember this part, I just remember being like grossed out by it. So they they the 2 daughters rape their father and then somehow in the end get their land because I think it was like they told everyone that like he raped them. Um, Something like that was my guess. Again, I'm probably totally getting this wrong. But I remember I'm like, I think this was written like this seems like a victim uh oppression story of rape because I've never heard in my entire life a situation where in a family relationship when there's incest that the children decide to rape the dad, but I've heard all these instances of the opposite happening. And I feel like if this story has any bearing on history at all, because during this time stories weren't they weren't deliberately written to be fictitious and they weren't written to be historical. It was this like time where you couldn't really verify events happening back then, and so it was like a lesson was learned and they decided to compel an exaggerated story to keep the lesson alive. So I'm saying that because, like, if this happened at all, um, it was probably, uh, yeah, like written as to blame the two victims of rape, and I think the dad raped them, and then, yeah, it's to like feel bad for the dad. I thought that was the most disgusting part of the whole Bible. Um, I told that part to my sister, who was also Christian, and then she became atheist. And she was like, "Wow, I didn't know about this story." But like, if the girls had to lie about the dad raping them, why did they have to rape their dad at all? Couldn't they just said he raped them? Why did they have to rape their dad? And I'm like, that's a great point. Why did they even bother raping him at all? It's like you don't have to rape people anyways. That I just thought that was funny that my sister Marissa had that comment. Like, why bother raping your dad? Like, good point. Anyways, yeah, for a work of fiction, and again, this is, I don't want to sound mean, but so I don't think it was written coherently with the masterful work that we have compared to nowadays with lots of works of fiction. So, and damn it, if God is real, he would have known that there are masterpieces today, and so he should have written the Bible to the caliber of how good our stuff is written today. So I give the Bible a 3 out of 10.
Okay.
Um,
Can I jump in real quick? I'm very eager to say something.
sure, but really
Yeah,
quick,
yeah.
Alan, was that offensive or was that funny?
No,
Is
you
that
did
okay?
great. I thought it was hilarious. If the Bible's not Infinity War quality, then what are we even doing?
Very good. Okay, Love, take it away.
Okay, so first and foremost, I want to make something super clear. The Bible is not a book, it's a library, right? It's filled with many different books of many different genres. And I think that's super, super, super important to take into consideration when looking at these types of things. I mean, it's pretty clear that the Gospels are intended to be historical narrative, but for example, I'm personally not convinced that Genesis is at least not all of it is meant to be taken as as historical account, you know? And then there's the Psalms, of course. And that's a completely different genre than historical narrative. That's a completely different genre from like Revelations as well. But anyway, I want to be really careful when talking about this because I haven't read the Bible front to back. I'm going through it right now. So I just have a lot of questions, and I'm interested in asking some of these questions, if that's okay with you guys. Because it seems like you guys might know a little bit more, or definitely do know a little bit more about it as a text than I do. Go ahead.
Sure, but before we
Hmm.
dive into that,
Yeah,
Love, just off of what you have read, because I know you've been studying more
sure.
of the
I've been going
Gospels
through the
recently.
Gospels, right?
Yeah. What are your thoughts of the Gospel? And then we would have concluded our thoughts on the Bible, and then we'll get into
I understand.
open. Yeah. So
Okay.
thoughts on the Bible so far.
So right now I'm on Luke, and I'm going through the NIV Bible, and then I'm just going to go through the direct word for word Greek translation after, which has some error in syntax, just because we speak English. But I really want to like understand word for word what it means. But so far, going through the Gospels. Oh, actually, I want to preface by saying this. So even though I haven't read the Bible front to back, growing up Catholic, you kind of live the Bible. Every Sunday at Mass, they read the Bible, and you know, you go through the entire Bible basically. But I've never sat down and like really read it like you would read, you know, a book by the fireside at nighttime. Like I've never really, for myself, read it. Excuse me. But going through it officially like that for the first time, I was really, really surprised. I don't want to come off as offensive, and I hope I certainly hope I don't. But after going through Matthew, I had a shocking realization, which was, and perhaps this is just Jesus in the book of Matthew, I don't really like Jesus. Um, I don't think Jesus is a bad person per se,
And
but
Love came to this realization like really recently. I talked to you like a
right.
couple days ago about this,
Mhm.
and yeah,
Yeah.
so this is super recent.
Um, I felt like Jesus as a person was very interested in condemning people to hell. I don't mean like literally burn in hell, but I mean telling people, you know, you're going to hell, you're going to hell, you're going to hell. I felt like there was a really heavy emphasis on doomsday, the end of times is coming. I believe in the Bible or in the Gospel of Mark, he even says, "This generation will not pass before the end of the end of times come." I think. Don't quote me on that, but even if that's not 100% accurate, there is this really heavy emphasis on the end of times, and it felt to me like Jesus was, I don't want to be offensive, but kind of like a cult leader. Um, that's not to say Jesus doesn't have valuable teachings. I think that Jesus, as a philosopher, for example, um, philosophers aren't correct on everything, obviously. But as a philosopher, there are some incredibly insightful things that are being said. And we can demonstrate their insightfulness just by the fact that to this day, they're still being applied. We found that they're extremely effective for living life. But I feel like we kind of pick and choose a little bit. I feel like we take the positives and the negatives. We're like, well, and I'm not accusing anyone in here of doing that. I'm just saying in general, we see the negatives or we read the negatives and we're like, well, I'm not so sure about that. I'm just going to kind of put that to the side and take the positives. I think we need to take Jesus for everything that he's claimed to have been. And if we take him for everything he's claimed to have been, I can't really say I'm a big fan of him.
I love
So
that. I love the strength of your take on it. It's awesome.
thanks. Thanks.
Yeah, I
I
think
appreciate it.
what I admire most about your share is just like it's the strength of conviction in where you landed. That to me is
Well,
like,
thank you.
yeah, I'm appreciative of that in you. It's really, really awesome.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate your open-mindedness and your ability to, even though we probably disagree on quite a bit regarding this, your ability to find the positives in that. I think that's a really great quality.
Yeah, and to be clear, like for me, it's like I remain open-minded because I'm like, what's the alternative that I'm convinced I know how the world works, you know?
Right, right.
And then at that point, like life, like I think the moment we become convinced we know how the world works, everything just becomes so boring. It's just like
Mhm.
life then becomes this just like box, and it's like no,
Right. A
I'd
race to the
rather,
finish.
yeah, and I'd rather like really love and appreciate both Bryce and Love, the both of you, like for like what you're saying, how you're saying it, your life experience, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, thank
Really
you for your
quick,
share.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to share with the audience something that I can attest to both Love and Alan's gift of open-mindedness.
Thank you.
I asked Love, actually, you know what? I do this with a lot of people because the last thing I ever want someone to feel like is trapped in their thinking, or make them feel like I'm attacking them for their thinking. So I presented to Love. This was like 2 years ago or something. Um, I said something like, "Love, if what you believe was not true, um, what would convince you of that?" I was but I didn't ask Love directly. I said, "Love, what I tell other people is this
Mm-hmm.
question." So I just proposed the question. I didn't ask Love that question. And the reason I didn't do that is because it causes people to decide a yes or no question answer, and based on how they're feeling in that moment, even though they could be wishy-washy. And I don't want to have anyone to come to a definite conclusion of that. I was simply present that question is meant to present falsifiability in whatever you believe. So I deliberately did not ask Love that question uh, to him, but I proposed the question. And Love, correct me if I'm wrong, that question sat with you for a while
Mm-hmm.
until you decided what that was, or something like that. I want to get to that in a second, but I also
Okay.
said the same thing to Alan. I proposed the question, but Alan was just like, "Bryce, you don't have to." Alan could read me like a book. He's like, "Bryce, you don't have to like propose the question and not actually ask me. You could just ask me that
Mm-hmm.
question." And I'm like, "Okay, Alan, are you essentially open-minded to being wrong?" And Alan is said confidently, "Absolutely."
Mm-hmm.
Very well. So just so the audience knows, like both Alan and Love are open to their mind being changed. Love would love to be convinced otherwise, and Alan would also love to be convinced otherwise as well. So, but we're not going to do that here today necessarily. Just want to show you guys that Love and Alan are coming from the same place. But yeah, Love, you
Mm-hmm.
pondered on that question, and what came of it?
Sure. So, okay. So even before you asked the question, there was a thought in my head that I didn't take super seriously, and that was, is Judas Iscariot in heaven or is he in hell? Right? And the reason why this is something that I had questions about, although again I didn't really take this super seriously, was because if God creates everybody, he would have created Judas, and Judas betrayed Jesus. God knows the future. He would have created him knowing that he was going to betray Jesus. And Jesus says that it would have been better for Judas to not have been born. So I that was like weird to me. But after you indirectly asked me that question or brought it up, however we want to phrase it, I really started thinking more about that one. And I thought, you know, it led to, how can we have free will if God knows the future? I'm not sure where Alan stands on this. Of course, I come from a background that's a little bit more organized religious-y, obviously the Catholic Church. And it's really, and I don't know to what extent other types of, forgive the expression, just for lack of a better term, what other types of Christians think about this. But from my understanding, it's really imperative in a faith in Christ as your Savior that you have free will, and also that God knows the future. And I found those things irreconcilable. And I really thought hard about it. And I was like, oh God, that's really tough. And the only conclusion I could really come to after talking to a lot of people about this, the only conclusion that I could really come to was that the only way for that to be reconciled is to say something along the lines of, well, yes, it does break the laws of logic, but God created the laws of logic and God can break them if he wants. But I didn't find that super convincing. I found that to kind of be an escape hatch. I didn't find that fulfilling of an answer. That was really the big thing. Was that what you wanted to? Was that what you were curious about? Because that was
Yeah,
basically the
yeah, I
answer
find
to
that
your
interesting.
question.
Yeah, because there are, I don't think Alan believes this, but there are genuine people that are religious that will define God into being capable of breaking the laws of logic. That to the question, can God create a sandwich so big that he himself cannot eat? They would say both yes and no, because God is not bound by the laws of logic, and
Or you
it's
could just say that that's
crazy.
like an impossibility. Like, how could God contradict himself?
But he can because he's God, right? So that's what I'm saying.
Gotcha. From
Uh,
my understanding, though, I usually hear from most Christians that the answer to that question being, and maybe this is a perspective you haven't heard, I don't know, that God can't contradict himself because God is all powerful. So I don't
very
know.
well,
That's just another thing I'll throw out there.
very well. Alan, take it away.
I was actually, yeah, I was curious. Love, you had mentioned after I had shared about kind of my experience with the Bible, you would be like, I've got so many questions. And I was
Hmm.
like, I was genuinely, the excitement that you had around that was
Hmm.
like lit me up. So I was curious. I have a few more minutes. I can squeeze in a few more here. I was curious if you had any questions that were remaining that you wanted to ask.
Gotcha. Sure. So I guess the biggest question I wanted to ask was, you had mentioned that you go through the Bible and there were certain things that you weren't so sure about, and there were certain things that you felt really good about. Is that correct? Is that a correct
Yeah,
interpretation?
yeah, I
Okay.
think so.
I was just curious briefly, how were you distinguishing between what was meant to be taken true in the Bible and what was meant to be and what was not true? Like, how did you distinguish? Was it just based on how you felt, or was there something a bit deeper?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it was two-part answer. First
Okay.
is like a general like heart sense. So I'd
Hmm.
always check in. I genuinely, this it sounds kind of lame, but it's true. I would always check in with how my chest would feel. If my
Okay.
chest felt open and it felt out of conflict and it felt like, yep, I agree with this, then I was like, okay, I'll take that in. But if I had some type of like just like turmoil, some type of conflict, I'm like, that doesn't feel right. That doesn't seem right to me at all. Then I would reject it. Was like a general like body sense compassing. But the other side was like if it just like to me there were some moments where the Bible would declare certain things as like, this is how it being life, this is
Hmm.
how it is. And there would be times where it would declare, this is how, women should be. This is how
Hmm.
men should be. This is how, how sons should treat their father, etc. Right. And whenever those rules started to break break mutual respect, then I was like, yeah, it's not, I don't buy that. I was like, I think that might have been written by somebody who was trying to get their agenda in, because they wanted power, because like power is one of the most
Sure.
destructive things on the planet. And so if ever,
Sure.
like if someone said wives should be submissive to their husbands,
Mm-hmm.
essentially there, I mean, there are multiple times where the Bible would say that essentially women should submit every single time a man wants to have sex with his wife, regardless of the circumstance.
Right, right.
And like in stuff like that, I'd read it and I go, yeah, no, that's not how that works. I guess like that's just, I don't believe that.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy. Let me ask you, do you think that there are certain things in there that are God's truth that you would disagree with, but are actually God's truth? Like it's like there are some obvious things like, okay, don't rape your wife. Like, okay, gotcha. Like that's pretty inconsistent with the whole God thing. I understand. But do you think there are some things in there that made you feel uncomfortable, that didn't make your heart feel open, but might actually be true? You just I don't want to be antagonistic, but maybe you just aren't, forgive the expression, ready to accept it or
Sure.
something like that. You understand?
Yeah, absolutely, I
Okay.
do. And it's been a bit since I've read it, so that I wish I could say yes to
Mhm.
you and then also recite a passage.
Yeah, I don't expect perfect recitments, by the way. I'm just
Yeah.
curious if that you think that might be in the Bible somewhere in there.
Yeah, I think absolutely, because I
Yeah.
think there were times where like one I remember it would happen frequently
Hmm.
was when reading, oh gosh, was it Proverbs? Which one was written by Solomon? Was it Proverbs?
I couldn't tell you. I
Yeah,
couldn't
yeah.
tell you.
I believe it's Proverbs. And it was essentially the book that was written by Solomon, who is according to the Bible recorded to be the wisest person of all time.
Hmm. Hmm.
And as I'm reading the Proverbs, there were some of them that I would read, and they were like so spot on. And some of them was like, I'm not going to go and recite it, but there were some of them that were so good. I was like, oh my God, that's so true. But they would equally hit the that is so accurate part of me, as well
Hmm.
as hitting that's very uncomfortable to know. Like
Hmm.
I don't
Hmm.
like that. I want to resist that.
Hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, that definitely happened. There were definitely some things that the Bible said that I didn't feel ready to hear, but simultaneously had this understanding of like, oh yeah, I think I don't want to hear it because I'm not ready to hear it. Versus this is in conflict with my like moral value systems,
Hmm.
and I reject it entirely. So if that
Okay.
answers your question.
Yeah, that answers my question. Where do you think your moral systems come from? I mean, do you think they come from the world, or do you think God bestows these onto every person intuitively?
It's a good question. I'd say like from a psychology standpoint, from my upbringing,
Okay.
but ultimately, like where does it come from?
Yeah, like where does it, if we take that line back, your parents, your grandparents, your great
Yeah.
grandparents, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and I think from like that, I think it's like from parents and like what your family taught you, etc. And I think that was where a lot of my morals and my guidelines came from for a lot of my life. But then um when I started to really ponder the question, um what is love? And not your name, but but the force itself, like what
It's
is.
me.
Yeah, it's me. I am. Yeah. Like, what is love? Like, what is that force? How does love function? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so as an example, like we can like love is the one thing that we will not the one thing, but oftentimes love is used as the justification to break the rules, but often to break the rules for the right reasons. So as an example, like if we all want care about our own survival, but then if there is a mother who needs to stop harm happening to her children, but it will cause harm to her, she will. Or a
Mm-hmm.
father, a
Hmm.
father will do the same. And so it's like I started to get really interested in, like what is love and how does it affect people and how can I live my life by that? And what does it mean to live my life by love and not by love? What does it mean to live life by fear? What's a fearful action versus a loving action? What's a fearful philosophy versus a loving one? And how can I find the difference between the two? And there was a bit of time where I became pretty obsessed, and still to this day, very obsessed with, am I consistently acting out of love? What is love? What is the ultimate love? And am I acting out of fear? And now in my life, that's where I draw my my compass, if you will, is like really being obsessed with what is love, what's not, and how do I make sure that I act out of love? And if I feel resistant to act out of love, why? Why is that happening? And consistently challenging myself that if there is something in me that's having me resist acting out of love or what I've deemed as love, um, doing my best to work that out because I don't want that to be there in the moments where it matters most.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that's cool.
I think we have time for like one more question. But really quick, Alan, do you have any questions for Love?
I was
Because
just gonna ask that because I've been asking a
oh,
lot. I want to
perfect.
know if I want to give
Yeah.
him the opportunity.
Hmm. Let's see. My experience, yeah, my experience of you is like just really open-minded, probably more than I've ever met anybody. Like you're just like you're very,
Thanks.
but here's the thing is like
Told you.
you're open-minded while also being clear and landing firmly where you land. And that's not common. It's not normal that someone is both grounded in what they believe in who they are and how they got there, and also incredibly inquisitive and open-minded. And so for me, I'm actually really curious for yourself, like um, how, from your own assessment of your own life journey,
Hmm.
how did you get to that point? How did you arrive to the point of both being very confident with owning and claiming exactly where you are, while also simultaneously being open to everything new?
Gotcha. Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words. I think I can answer that question pretty simply. I don't think you can be open-minded unless you do know where you are, because you have to know where you stand in order to see if you are wrong. You know what I mean? And I think most people are like that. I think that it's just most people are afraid to share what they believe because they're afraid of being wrong. I think that's what it is. But I think that's how I'd answer the question.
Got it. So for you, it sounds like two parts. One, not being afraid of being wrong,
Hmm.
which I think is actually probably the biggest one. But then
Mm,
also is also you allowing yourself to do the balloons, doing the diligence to know to be able to definitively say this is where I stand because I've done my diligence on my stand, and
mhm.
I'm also willing to be wrong.
Yeah, I think that that's really important. And I think why I'm like that, I mean, we could probably just boil that down to temperament. I think I'm pretty low in agreeableness, which doesn't mean I don't try and be a jerk, um, but I'm pretty firm with what I believe. So, but I want to be like wrong. Like I want to know if I'm wrong because, like I said, I think I care about the truth. I try my best to seek out the truth. So I think that's where, and I think because I'm probably pretty disagreeable, I'm very like intent on doing that. So
Well,
Awesome.
yeah.
I love this. I love this. So, I want to wrap up with a bow on top. So, all three of us have been studying logical fallacies, and all three of us have been studying the Bible. So, I want to close with everyone's favorite fallacy, and then everyone's favorite Bible quote that they believe is speaks to them the most. So, I'll give you guys a sec to think about one of your favorite fallacies. If you want to reference the master list of logical fallacies, you can. I would say my favorite fallacy is tu quo qui, which is, yeah, I know that they're bad, or excuse me, well, I might be bad, but they're just as bad as I am, therefore I'm innocent. That's tu quo qui. I love that one. And all right, and well, yeah, we'll do the fallacies, and then we'll do favorite Bible verse. So, um, who has a fallacy?
Would you like to go first, Alan?
yeah, I go first. I think my favorite one, not because I like it in the sense of like I enjoy it, but because for me it's been the most effective to spot and help me in my life to spot in others is blind loyalty. That loyalty is something that essentially the idea is just like if you're not loyal, then you're wrong. And then someone in power decides that if you're not being loyal to me, then you're wrong. And to me, it's like, if anybody demands loyalty in any way, shape, or form in that fashion of like, if you don't become loyal to me, then you're wrong. Then I'm like, yeah, then no, sorry, you've been written off completely in my mind. Your motives are totally off. Your morals are off. I'm not even going to talk to you. So that's my favorite one because it helps me filter out the most people. My favorite Bible quote or verse.
Wait. We'll do that one after, and then yeah, and then so love your favorite fallacy.
It's begging the question. It's definitely begging the question. It's again one of those things where I feel like a lot of people do it. I've done it so many times in my life. I think it's so easy to accidentally do, and it's just so interesting just to see how many arguments are really made, using that fallacy. It's just, you know what it's like? It's like birds. I would say it's like birds. We see birds everywhere in our peripheral vision, but we never really look at them. But then once you start paying attention, you see that there's birds everywhere on this planet. You can't go anywhere without seeing some sort of bird. And I think that's why it's my favorite. It's just it's always there, but you don't really notice it until you start paying attention.
Yeah, I remember begging the question Alan really loved. We joked about that one a lot. Because a lot of people think birds are robots, and there's no evidence for birds being robots, but have you considered that birds are robots? That's begging the question. Okay, so yeah, Alan wants to do his favorite Bible quote first. So Alan,
I
favorite Bible
do.
quote.
I do, but I do need to go after this because I have a client call that starts in 1 minute.
Okay,
So I'll
okay.
share. It's Isaiah. My favorite part of the Bible of all is just Isaiah 11. I think it really depicts heaven really, really well. And I'll read just one part of it that I like the most, which is the wolf will dwell with the lamb, and the leopard will lie down with the goat. The calf, the young lion, and the fattened calf will be together, and a child will lead them. So that's Isaiah 11, verse 6. And I just
Awesome.
like it. Yeah, just my
Then,
favorite one.
Alan, are you cool with me publishing this if I don't have
Yeah,
time to
yeah,
ask
go
you?
for it. Go
All right,
for
cool.
it.
My favorite Bible quote is Ecclesiastes 1:2. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Um, all right, and then love.
To be honest, I don't really have a favorite Bible quote. I think it would be disingenuous for me to say one because I haven't gone through the whole Bible. So I don't know. I might
That's
not have
okay.
discovered it yet.
You could take mine or the one about coming. Uh,
I think I'll take the former.
okay, very good. All right, well, and love, you're fine with me publishing this as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed. I love you guys very much. And
Love you too.
until next time, later days.
See you guys.